Thanks very much, Charlie. And now we got down to the last but not the least. Are you still there, Michael? Are you still around? You are. Okay, Michael Schwartz. Of course, we grew up with Shirley and Howard are my cousins. Shirley unfortunately died relatively young. Gail, her daughter is here. Gail, you still around? Yeah. Hi. Gail was really helpful to make she made the roster, getting all you guys in one piece of paper, all history. And that's right. Does it have a captain? And then Howard was a judge, and this is Howard. Howard had 4 kids, and Michael is the oldest, and he's going to give us a fill in the details of it.
Past my bedtime, and probably everybody else's too. So, a lot of tough acts to follow here, and try to be brief. First of all, I want to say that the Harband family that I knew, I probably knew mostly because of Charlie and Evelyn, who regularly held parties of the family, the extended family, from my perspective, the extended family. And that's when I got a chance to see Howie and Keith and their parents and a lot of the other cousins, the Lavins, that we saw periodically, but it was really due to Charlie's, I would say, diligence as a relative and family member that I know my relatives at all, and so really grateful to Jody and all of the other people who helped Jody put this together, and follow the example that his father set for so many years. And I remember, I mean, one of the people I remember is your maternal grandfather, Joseph Krieger, who probably died when I was about 5, and I still remember meeting him. Very distinguished guy, and anyway. So I just want to say, from my perspective, this gathering tonight is part of a tradition that I remember started by Charlie. So I think I am supposed to talk about at least a part of the family whose patriarch is Jacob. Jacob Harband was my great-grandfather, and bought the luggage business from Willie, I guess. And Jacob had 2 wives, serially, not parallel. The first was Sarah Strauss, who was my great-grandmother, and Sarah had 2 children, Hannah, who was my grandmother, and Bobby, her younger sister, who was Paula's mother back there. Paula, you can raise your hand if you like. And then Sarah died, and Jacob then got a nanny, Sabina, who became then his second wife. Sabina was a revoke. My grandmother, I hesitate to say this, but my grandmother, throughout my childhood, tried to explain to me the difference between the real Harbands and the other Harbands who weren't exactly real Harbands. And I'm actually glad that I never really got that, because it didn't really make any difference to me. But I don't know, I still look back and laugh at it. Because it's such I don't know, there was so much togetherness in the family that just seems sort of strange. But in any case, so then Sabina had 3 children, Bessie, and lastly Charlie. So Hannah then was the matriarch of the family in my generation of cousins. Hannah had, so Hannah was, well, let's see. Hannah had a first cousin, Bessie, who was married to a gentleman named Henry Schwartz. And through Bessie Schwartz, she met my grandfather, Morris, who was Henry's brother. So I don't remember now who talked about the mother who was also an aunt or something like that. But Bessie was my grandmother's first cousin and also her sister-in-law.
It's one of those things.
Right. Maybe it was Lorraine. I guess it was Lorraine, actually. Okay, and Auntie B is what we called her, and she was as much a member of our family as anybody else. And we want to spend a little bit of time talking about Auntie B. But Hannah and Morris then had two children. Shirley, whose daughter Gail is back there, and my cousin.
All eyes turn this way.
And Howard, who is my father. Excuse me. And Hannah and Morris ran a business, clothing business, Mission Sportswear in Oakland, I believe on 12th Street. Is that right? Sorry?
Telegraph Avenue.
Telegraph Avenue, okay. What, telegraph and what? Well, my memory used to be dependable, but it's not. So they met in Los Angeles. They were introduced by Bessie Schwartz and Henry, and married, I guess, after their second date. 3 weeks, I guess got engaged 3 weeks after that, something like that. What I remember my grandmother telling me was, and again, I checked this with Gail. She said this is probably wrong. But what I remember her telling me was that my grandfather, Morris, at the time, he suffered from asthma chronically, and it was thought that living in the desert would be good for asthma, so he lived in Yuma, Arizona, and he was visiting Los Angeles, and my grandmother went down to Los Angeles to visit Bessie, and that's where they met. And as part of being in the desert, probably in the summer, I don't know, he had a shaved head, and she didn't think much of the shaved head, but she said he was a good dancer. That's what I remember. That's what I remember her telling me, and it seemed to be sufficient for them to get married. And so they lived in Yuma for 16 years before they moved back up here. My father spent the first 2 years of his life in Yuma. Excuse me here. I want to make sure I cover everything. Okay. So that's a little background on the family. I want to say a few things about my grandmother and about Auntie B and my Aunt Shirley and my father. My grandmother was functionally, as I understand it, a partner in the family business, and was a working woman. And I didn't know her in those days. My grandfather died when I was about 2. I have a couple of memories of her. That I just want to mention as sort of images. She was always impeccably dressed. She was a creature of habit. She got her hair done every week like clockwork. I remember the name of her hairdresser, Neil. often had jokes, off-color jokes. Seems to run in the family, the off-color jokes. I heard somebody else referring to those. But she was relatively discreet about telling them in front of the grandchildren. She also played canasta every week. I've wondered whether it's a good match. My grandfather played gin, she played canasta. They seemed to get along okay. She also was a big fan of the Sunday murder mystery. Somebody was mentioning television, 60s, 70s television. She was a big fan of Columbo, Banachek, Cannon, McCloud. That was the Sunday mystery series. I remember that very well. And she recalled the plots in pretty good detail. About every 6 months, one of her cousin, sister-in-law, and I think one of her best friends, Bessie, Auntie B, would come up from Tehachapi, first LA and then Tehachapi, to visit, and spent the holidays with us every year. I have a couple of recollections of Auntie B that I want to mention. One of them, my brother Doug, who's back there, might remember. We used to go to lunch with my grandmother all the time. That was another one of her regular habits at either the Hickory Pit on Telegraph Avenue in Oakland or the Merritt downtown. And we happened to go to the Merritt. I think Doug was probably about 6 or 7. And Auntie B was about 85 at the time, I would say. And we were at lunch, and Auntie B said, I just came from the doctor, and he said, Bessie, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. Don't change nothing. And my grandmother said, it's don't change anything. And then she looked at Doug and me and she said, I keep telling her that, but she just don't listen to me. Years later, I had the honor of going to Auntie B's 100th birthday party in Tehachapi, thanks to Gail, who contacted me and said, are you going to Auntie B's 100th birthday party? And I did, and I was dating the woman who eventually became my wife. And I thought, what better way to introduce her to the family than to go to Auntie B's 100th birthday party? So I flew down to LA and picked up Kathleen up, and we drove up to Tehachapi. And Auntie B was holding court. Auntie B had a really colorful life, I would say. So it's sort of like a. She said they were sitting alongside the. They were sitting alongside the golf course, watching all these elderly men walking down the golf course. And Auntie B said to my grandmother, Hannah, you have any idea how much money we could be making?
What did he say?
And Auntie B lived until 102. An amazing person. Their daughter, my grandmother's daughter, Shirley, my aunt, I remember as a beautiful and charming person.
She was.
Great sense of humor, lots of personality. She became very active in the tourism business as a travel agent and a tour guide all around the world. Gail said, you know, she wanted to travel all her life, and she figured out a way to do it, and make a career out of it. And she was, I think in some ways the gateway to the rest of the world for the family that if they wanted to travel elsewhere, they always consulted her, and she had always been somewhere interesting and had lots of tales to tell. She died early, I think at age 60. We used to go to Thanksgiving with her down in Palm Springs every year. That was the warm Thanksgiving. My father, just a few things about my father. He was a judge. He knew he wanted to be a judge. I think he told me he knew he wanted to be a judge when he was in 6th grade. Everyone he knew in the family were businessmen, business people. He did not want to follow in his father's footsteps in business, and he ended up actually becoming a judge. I think one of the other highlights of his life was the 2 years that he spent serving in the Navy. Went to Stanford, which was also really important to him. Big Stanford sports fan, and just a big sports fan all around. I think one of the best years in the history of our family was probably the year that the Raiders beat the Vikings in the Super Bowl. I saw the Vikings jersey up there, by the way. I had to put that in there. He was active in the community. He always told us that it was important to participate in the community. I have to say I'm standing up here today probably because of advice that he gave me to raise your hand when somebody asks you to do things. It's not my nature actually to do that. A lot of times I prefer to say no, let somebody else do it. And like tonight, oftentimes I'm not as prepared as I could have been, but he did encourage us all to participate, and I think he was an active and valuable member of society, and that's what he aspired to be. I still run into people who knew him and had contact with him professionally or personally, and they almost always say something about that, his participation in society and civic affairs. And he died in 2003. I don't really have much else to add. I appreciate your patience and attention. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot, Michael. Learned a few things about your family too. What can I say? This is the end of formal end of our evening, but I think it's going to be the beginning of a lot of new contacts that we've made, and different family members have met. You all have the emails and et cetera, and I hope this will be this. And I guess I really hope that one of these little guys that are sitting around here and staying awake, they're going to be the ones in another 60 years, they're going to have another reunion. Say, hey, time has come. But again, I thank you all very much. This has really been terrific.
Thank you.
Okay, before I finish, the people who want to go tomorrow to the trip